Hey, what's up guys? I'm Sal. Thanks for checking out the video. I was thinking about it and I've done so many things to my truck on this channel and most of them haven't had a proper follow-up video letting you guys know how they're holding up over time. So I thought it would be a good opportunity today to just walk around the truck, kind of give you guys an idea of the state that it's in right now with how my maintenance has been holding up as well as some of the modifications and upgrades. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm just going to start up front and then work my way back. So starting with the headlights. The CO-Light LED projector headlight bulbs were probably the most popular upgrade that I did on this truck. That video is doing really well still, and I'm happy to report that they're still working as good as the day that I got them. I got really no complaints. The biggest thing is at the top of the cutoff there's the really prominent blue and purple line. So it definitely takes a little bit of getting used to, but this point I'm like almost 2 years in with having them in, and I don't even really notice it anymore. But the light output is significantly better than stock, so definitely would still recommend it, especially for the price. Next to them over here, you can see this passenger side marker is starting to get a little bit of condensation in it, so that's a new problem. I'll have to replace those. But next, moving down to the fog lights. So I made a video about this a couple months ago now. I upgraded to some aux beam LED fog light bulbs, and they're still holding up well. I opted for the yellow ones. I just think it looks a little bit cooler. And then what I did down here was I actually, instead of opting for the like an off-the-shelf headlight restoration kit, I wanted to try and do it myself. So I went ahead and took them off the truck, sanded them all down, and then re-cleared them with a 2K clear spray paint clear coat. So the way that works is it has two components in it, and it acts more like a really high quality paint. And I'm happy to report it's holding up really well. It's not really starting to show any signs of yellowing. I mean, you can judge for yourself, but I'm still really happy with how they turned out, and I think they're holding up a lot better than they would have held up if I had just gone with one of those off-the-shelf headlight restoration kits. Last thing to talk about up here is the grille. Some of you guys may remember I put on the TRD Pro inspired grille that Trail Runner Custom sent me, and I really like the look. I went back and forth. I actually put it on the truck, took it back off, put it back on a couple times for a couple days at a time, just playing around with if I want to stick with that style or not. And ultimately I decided I preferred this over that. But the grille itself was still good quality. I have a whole video dedicated to that one. I'll have it linked below. But yeah, bottom line, I just opted to stay with this one. Really no particular reason. Okay, next moving over here. Shortly after starting the channel, I actually got a seized brake caliper on this side. So got a replacement from AutoZone, and I'm happy to report roughly 30,000 miles later that no more issues, everything's good to go. Coming around to this side next, you might remember I actually had a bad wheel bearing on the front left here, and that was quite the install. I did it myself in the garage, and it went okay. There was some hiccups that I learned from, especially it would go a lot smoother if I decided to do it again. But I'm happy to report it's holding up well. It was giving me a little bit of a concern at the beginning there. It was getting kind of a squeal at really low speeds, like going through a drive-through or something like that. But that happened for, I don't know, maybe 5,000 miles, and then after that, I guess maybe it broke in, and I haven't heard that sound since, and it seems to be holding up so far, so good. While we're up here, I'll also talk about the suspension. I just did it like a month ago, so I can't really give a long-term review, but I did Bilstein 4600s up here with a 2-inch leveling spacer, and ride feels a lot better than it did. The bushings were toast beforehand, so that's good to go, but I do still have that rattle that I talked about in that video. I really appreciate all the input that you guys were given. I was really mostly surprised at how many of you guys were recommending me look into things that weren't suspension related, whether it be like fog light brackets or door pins, or just other things that might be loose in here rattling around, body mounts. Because my brain was strictly talking about suspension stuff, and you guys were like, it might be actually other things in here. So I appreciate that. I still haven't been able to find the rattle. I kind of got under here the other day and was smacking stuff with a rubber hammer, seeing if anything felt or sounded super loose. But no luck so far, but I'll keep you guys updated there. Last thing I want to talk about right here are the wheel and tire setup. So it's Vision Manx wheels, 16x8 plus 0, and I got no complaints. When I originally bought them, this lip came really like chrome and shiny. So I just went over it with some Scotch-Brite and just kind of knocked it down a little bit. And I really like this more matte look a lot better. As far as the tires, they're Goodyear Wrangler Authority tires, 265, 75 R16s, and they're holding up really well. The treads are still really deep. I've had them on for roughly 35,000 miles now, and I just went and got the truck aligned after doing the suspension, and the guy was like, "Oh, new tires?" And I'm like, "No, they're actually 35,000 miles old," and he was very impressed with the, how much they're holding up. With that said, biggest con with the tires is they're super loud. I do a lot of highway driving, either going to work or going down to North Carolina. It's about a 3-hour trip one way, and that takes its toll on you when you got super loud all-terrain tires. These are probably as close to a mud terrain as you can get without being like called a mud terrain, because these knobs are so thick. You can really feel it and hear it rolling down the road. Okay, last three things up front are all kind of silly, but I wanted to mention them. FJ Cruiser windshield washer squirters, 10 out of 10 would still recommend, holding up great. Next, recently I had an engine misfire on the truck, so I replaced all the coil packs, and happy to say that no more issues since then, so seems to have solved the problem. And then the last thing is really silly, but all the bolts that hold the skid plate up were all getting really stripped out, and the threads that they thread into in the frame and stuff were really bad when I bought the truck. So what I did, it was the second video I really ever made on the channel, and it was using helicoils to get some new threads in there, new bolts, and that made a huge difference. Now, taking the skid plate off to do oil changes is so easy. It just threads in like it's brand new still, so definitely would recommend that. It was actually really easy to do, and that video, it's a little painful. It's the second one I ever made, but it has some pretty good information in it too. Okay, last thing I want to talk about before moving on to the interior are these fender flares, because I get this question almost every day. Hey, where'd you get your fender flares from? And I can't blame you. I mean, they look really cool on these trucks, but as far as I know, these are from Toyota. Depending on what trim level you got, back in the day, you could either get it with nothing here, you get it with like a really thin chrome strip, you get these black plastic flares, or you can get them color matched to your truck, which I think probably only came on the limited trims. So it's kind of luck of the draw on if the truck you find on Facebook Marketplace has these, but I know there's some replacements on eBay. I don't have any experience with them, and I think your best bet might be going to like a junkyard and finding these on a truck there, or maybe someone parting out a truck on Facebook Marketplace or something like that. So yeah, as far as I know though, the ones on my truck are OEM from Toyota. Okay, next we'll move into the interior, and there's a couple things that I've done in here that have made livability so much nicer. So one of the most recent things was a full LED conversion in here. I'm really happy that that video is still doing well, getting out to a bunch of people, because I think it's really worth it. The LEDs behind the gauge cluster, behind the HVAC controls, and the dome lights. When I first did it, I was like, ooh, this might be too bright, because at night it's significantly brighter than it was stock. But after living with it for a little bit, you get used to it, and I'm actually really happy with the light output from all the stuff, especially behind the controls, but also the dome lights. They're not too like excessively bright, so I'm happy with that there. Next up, we got the head unit. So I've made a couple videos about this, so I won't go into too much in depth here, but it's the Atoto F7 XE, so it's wireless Apple CarPlay, and this thing's been great. I fairly recently made an update video on how it's holding up, and even some of the problems I talked about in that video have gone away since then. Like my phone connectivity, I was mentioning how sometimes my phone will connect, but then the screen will freeze, and I guess with the latest iOS update, it seemed to have solved it, so that doesn't happen anymore. It works almost flawlessly now. I'm super happy with it. Along with the head unit, I also upgraded the speakers, as well as added an underseat subwoofer under the driver's seat, and let me tell you, especially the subwoofer was such a worthwhile upgrade. It's just, you can hear the low notes in songs now, and when it's under your seat, you feel it. It's really fun actually. So it's not gonna blow the doors off the cars next to you in traffic or anything like that, but if you just want to enhance the sound of your music a little bit better, I think that's a really good way of doing it, and it's not too much money, like if you're going to do a full system in the back or something like that. You could even add another one underneath the passenger seat, and I think that would definitely improve things even better too. As far as the door speakers, I'm sure they were an improvement. I don't really know. I definitely wouldn't recommend doing them in the back, especially in the access cab. I don't know really why I did it in the first place, but doing them up front is probably worth it. Doing it, this underseat subwoofer is definitely worth it. And then the ones in the back, you could probably skip out and not really notice a difference there. Another thing I've had in here since almost as long as I've owned the truck are these WeatherTech floor mats, and they're holding up really well. When you take them out, scrub them down with some like vinyl and rubber cleaner, they clean up and look basically brand new. But I will say I'm not super happy with the fit and how they conform to the truck. You can tell they were molded for the truck. They should fit around all the corners. But it just, I don't know, the way that they're sitting, they kind of pull away, and it can be kind of annoying catching your foot on it coming in the door. Plus they just don't look super great. But as far as functionality wise, they work perfectly, and they've definitely done a good job of protecting my carpets when I drive to work in boots every day. The only last thing to talk about on the interior are these aluminum hinges for the rear glass here. The stock ones are just plastic, and they're known to crack and fail on you. So mine were both gone when I bought the truck. So I bought these aluminum ones on Amazon, super cheap, and they work great. I talked about it in a previous video, but when you close it all the way, the window actually pushes back out a tiny bit, so you hear a little bit of wind noise. So I just always have to kind of set them to this position, and then there's no more wind noise there. But it sounds like, from what some of you guys were saying, it was even that way stock. So just a poor design, I guess. Okay, moving on to the back of the truck, we'll start here with the third brake light. When I bought the truck, the stock third brake light was all yellowed and cracked and everything, so I needed to replace it. And I was looking around, and all the aftermarket ones all looked just kind of bad in my opinion. So I found this one on eBay, and I just think it looks very OEM. It looks clean, and it seems to be holding up really well. I haven't had any issues with it. The actual brake light itself is LED, so I haven't had any of those LEDs go bad yet, and I think it just pairs well with the LED brake lights that I had, brake light bulbs that I installed, because I didn't like how the brake light bulbs were LEDs, this was halogen, and then it just didn't really look super good. So now it's all matched up, all LED, and yeah, I'm happy with it. So moving back here, I just mentioned it, but I did do LED brake and reverse light bulbs. I opted not to do the turn signal bulbs just because I didn't really care to do it, and then also I didn't want to have to deal with the hyper flash and getting a new relay and stuff. But the other two bulbs have been holding up well, no issues, and definitely much better light output from the reverse lights backing up. Back here, you also notice that I still haven't gotten the tailgate fixed from someone tapping me a little over a year ago now at this point. Unfortunately, it was a hit and run in the middle of the night. I came out to my truck, it was parked on the street, and someone tapped it, didn't leave a note or anything. So I think the dent itself could get pulled out with PDR, but the paint is actually cracked down along here, so that's the biggest bummer. I've been meaning to do touch-up paint on this area here, but just haven't gotten around to it. It's just one of those things that keeps slipping my mind. But next step back here is the reverse camera. So this has been one of my favorite upgrades that I've done to the truck, because I still like backing up, just looking over my shoulder using the mirrors. But when you're backing up to another car or backing up to a parking spot, it's hard to judge in a pickup truck if you're there or not. I mean, the mirrors can help you get a little bit closer, but nothing beats having a camera looking right down here to see where you're at. Biggest downside is if you have a tow hitch in here, the camera can't actually see that. It's blocked by the bottom of the handle here. That's definitely easily alleviated by buying one of those handles that has the integrated camera in it. It was just a little bit more money than I wanted to spend on my truck. This camera was, if I remember correctly, it was like $30. And the ones that I was looking at with the integrated camera were like 150 bucks. So I just couldn't justify spending 5 times the cost for that. And this has been working great. It does everything I needed to do. I don't really tow with this truck, so overall, super happy with the backup camera. Another upgrade I did over the winter were the tailgate bushings, and they've been holding up really good too. There's no squeaking. When the tailgate closes, it closes super sturdy. And that's been so awesome this summer, where I like driving around with the windows down. Before, there'd be a constant squeak coming from the bushings back here, but Ryan from B40 Built designs these out of rubber, and they're 3D printed, and they make a huge difference. The truck or the tailgate closes nice and securely now, and that rattle's completely gone. So I'll have his information linked in the description below. Okay, last thing to talk about back here is the exhaust. This is the MBRP catback exhaust, and I love this exhaust. It's exactly what I was going for on this truck. It's not too loud, but it's louder than stock and has a great tone. It does exactly what I was going for. It reminds me that I got a V8 every time I'm driving around, but it's not obnoxious to everybody around me, or it doesn't drone in the cabin. It's just the right extra bit of noise, and it sounds really good too. I just feel like some other trucks from this era, like the older Dodges or Chevys, when they have aftermarket exhaust systems on them, they sound loud, but they don't necessarily sound good. They're really clappy and just, I don't know, they don't sound the best to me. And I think that this exhaust system on this truck, it's kind of like the Goldilocks exhaust, where it's not too quiet, but it's not too loud. It's just right in the middle there, and the tone is awesome. I always really struggle to get good clips of it on video. I've tried a bunch of different ways, but let me tell you, in person, it sounds awesome, and I would 100% recommend this exhaust. I will try to get some clips for you here though, so let's hear how it sounds. Awesome. Well, I hope you found the video helpful. If there's any other things that I've done that maybe I forgot to talk about and you've got questions on, just let me know in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Also, if you have any other recommendations on things that I should do to my truck, totally let me know. I'm always looking for new things to make this thing a little bit better. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and have a great rest of your day.